They would finally get answers, but sadly, they will never get justice. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Nacole Smith. Viewer discretion is advised. Real quick before we get started, of course, hello, my name is Mike. If you're new to the channel, I tell 3 true crime stories very fancily. No, I don't. A week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I also tell short form true crime stories over on TikTok where I'm more known. I have close to 3 million followers over there or so. Feel free to follow me there too. The link will pop up here somewhere in the beginning of the video and at the end. And then I will also have it linked in the description of this video below. The link tree will also have my merch store. I sell like t-shirts and hoodies and stuff like that. We do ship all over the entire world, so check that out if you like. And then lastly, if there is a case you want me to cover, just email me. My email is listed below as well. Email me the name of the case, where it happened, when it happened. I'll add it to my list. I have over 5,500 names on there as of right now, so it may be a while before I get to that one. I pick my cases at random, to be fair. I will get to it eventually. But let's get into today's case. Stop with the weird face, Mike. Okay. It's June 7th, 1995 in Atlanta, Georgia. 14-year-old Nacole Smith had left the house that morning with her sister to walk to school. The two sisters attended Ralph Munch Middle School, and they always walked to school because it was pretty close by. Nacole was 14 years old. She was described as a really caring, loving, and incredibly responsible teenager. Nacole was a very mature young girl, someone who didn't really get involved with like the wrong crowd at school. She was always well behaved. She got really good grades and she was super close to graduating from the 8th grade and then would be moving on to high school. And by all accounts, Nacole was really excited to finally start high school because that means she was closer and closer to going to college because she had these aspirations of becoming a doctor or working in the medical field. But sadly, on that day in 1995, all of that would come crashing to the ground. And Nacole would never even make it to high school. She never even made it to her middle school that day. So, on that morning of June 7th, 1995, Nacole and her sister left. They were walking to school when Nacole realized that she accidentally left an assignment of hers back at the apartment. So she tells her sister, hey, I'm gonna turn around, I'm gonna go get that assignment, and then I will take a shortcut, the shortcut they always took through this wooded area, and she would meet her sister at the school. So the sister can confirm that Nacole turned around and began walking back towards the apartment. But unfortunately, Nacole never even made it back to the apartment to get her assignment. At 9:20 a.m., 911 got at least one phone call with regards to shots being fired somewhere near the area where the girls would take a shortcut, to get to school. It was this very heavily wooded trail, and it was covered by a lot of trees. And so there was a lot of kind of like a dark kind of area, even like in the morning or in the daylight. But the road, the main road, where you would then cut into this shortcut, it was a very busy road. There was a lot of cars moving. This was a weekday morning. People were still going to work and or driving to school. And there was a lot of stuff going on. And so at first, police are like, oh, there's gunshots being fired. Like, that can't be anything too serious, right? It was pretty serious. They walked down the trail where the gunshots were allegedly coming from, and they found a body. It was the partially clothed body of 14-year-old Nacole Smith. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Nacole was nude from the waist down, and she had 2 gunshot wounds directly to her forehead. Both were done at relatively close range, almost as if this was execution style. And this was done, they determined, by a 9mm handgun. The gun was not at the crime scene. And because she was partially, nude, they assumed from the get-go that she was likely sexually assaulted, and later the coroner would confirm that she was violently sexually assaulted. It was very brutal. There was clothing kind of near her clothes, that had some of her blood on it. From what I understand, they did also collect DNA from the crime scene that was not Nacole's, I believe in the form of male bodily fluid. When the 911 call was made, another individual says he saw a man running from the woods from where the gunshots came from. This individual was a younger black male, and he was observed with, I guess, a t-shirt wrapped around his arm or something like that, and then he also had a gun in his hand. The witness got a pretty good look at him, and I think someone else did as well, and they came up with a composite drawing of what this man looked like. And it's a really clear composite. Like, this definitely appeared to the witnesses, and when they saw it, they're like, yeah, that looks really, really close to the guy. And this was their suspect. I mean, this guy was running out of the woods right after the gunshots were heard, and he had a gun in his hand. Unfortunately, though, the DNA left behind, it didn't match anyone, and there really wasn't any other genuine forensic evidence left at the crime scene. Like, no hair samples, there was obviously no fingerprints on anything, because there really wasn't anything to have fingerprints on them. They put out the composite drawing on the news. They're asking for the public's help. Please, if you recognize this individual, please let us know. But they really weren't getting any hits. They weren't getting any tips or leads or really anything. So the case goes cold. And then in 2004, there is an unfortunate update. A 13-year-old girl named Betty Brown, she had been attending a party at a friend's house, like a big barbecue. And after the barbecue, she decided to walk home. And then this was located in East Point, Georgia. Now, according to Betty, a man came out of nowhere and began accosting her with these questions. And this was a grown adult man. And then she again was 13 years old. And then somewhere at the beginning of all these questions he's asking her, he just basically shoves her to the ground. And he stood over her and said, if you move or if you scream or you do anything, I will kill you right here and right now. And obviously she's petrified. And so the man, he sexually assaults her right then and there. But this time, thankfully, he did not kill her. He instead ran away. Betty then ends up in a hospital because of the situation. They do a rape kit on her, and they do find male bodily fluid. And she also was able to provide a very detailed description of the man. And when you compare her description to description from the Nacole Smith case, the descriptions are identical. This is the same guy. The same guy did this. Now, at this point in 2004, they're able to take that DNA from Betty's case, and they wanted to test it against the DNA found on Nacole's case, just to see if it was the same guy. They can confirm it. They did. It was a match. The same perpetrator sexually assaulted and murdered Nacole Smith, and then many years later, sexually assaulted Betty Brown. But when they plugged that DNA into the system, the profile, even though at that point our technology had advanced a lot where we could identify a person, it just never matched anyone because the perpetrator, their DNA was not in the system at all at that point. And really what happened from that point on was that the detectives, they had nothing else to go on. You have an eyewitness, a survivor of this man's assault, giving a really great description. You've got DNA. You have witnesses from the first case, the murder case. You've got DNA. You've got witnesses who can say they saw the man. It's kind of crazy. You have his DNA. You have a very clear description, but they're getting nowhere. And the case, once again, goes cold. They're getting very few leads, very few tips. Years go by, a decade goes by, and now we're into 2017. There is now a new detective assigned to this case. Essentially, it's considered like a cold case team at that point. And they begin combing through all of the evidence from both cases. They are trying to see if they could get any other forensic evidence off of anything. They're combing through witness statements and the 911 calls. They're going through any tips and leads they got, and they're working those tips and leads again just to make sure, but they don't get anywhere. But finally, they decide that, hey, we can now use this ancestral DNA. That's becoming the big thing. This genealogical DNA, ancestral DNA, is factoring in now to a lot of cases being solved, especially even really old ones, where they're now able to plug this profile into the system and match it to any known relatives who had willingly given their DNA to those ancestry websites and whatnot. And so they do build a profile on this. And what comes up now is they find a second cousin twice removed from the perpetrator, from the one who killed Nacole and sexually assaulted Betty. By process of elimination, they were able to get it down to one family member. The man's name was Kelvin Arnold. Kelvin bore a very strong resemblance to the composite drawings that were done from the initial 2 cases. They looked into Kelvin and his whereabouts during the time of both cases. They confirmed that he lived literally in the area of Nacole's school and where she would have been walking. And he also lived, at the time of Betty's case, he lived really, really close to her. But Kelvin had never been convicted or arrested of any other crimes where he needed to give his DNA. And so that's why they had the hardest time trying to find him. Kelvin had been in the military, apparently, and he did, that he didn't really cause any issues. He never really seemed to be a troublesome person, at least not known to people. So it was actually in about 2021 when they got the confirmed match that it was Kelvin Arnold's DNA. By the time they got this confirmed match, Kelvin would have been 49 years old. But unfortunately, Kelvin was dead. Kelvin had been living in hospice the last, short brief time of his life. He was dealing with kidney and liver failure. And so he eventually died in hospice in Fulton County, Georgia in 2021. This was literally months before the confirmed match came in. Now, when they got this, ancestral genealogical DNA confirmation, they still needed to directly compare it to his known DNA. But because he was dead, they wanted to see if they can maybe exhume him to confirm it. But he was cremated. And so that was a big ugh. However, it turns out that he did provide DNA in the recent years before this was discovered because he had been accused of a sexual assault. However, that DNA was not put into any system, but they had the DNA. And so that's how they were able to confirm without a shadow of a doubt that this DNA was Kelvin Arnold. And he was the murderer of Nacole Smith and the sexual assaulter, the rapist of Betty Brown. It was very bittersweet to Betty and also to Nacole's mom and Nacole's family because you have the answers. You finally have a name to the face. You have a name to the monster. You know who it is, but he won't face justice. He won't go to trial. He won't be found guilty by a jury of his peers. He won't be sentenced to prison. He's dead. He's cremated. He's gone. He got away with it. Kelvin Arnold got away with at least 2 rapes and 1 murder that they know of. There was a press conference when they announced that they've identified the murderer, and they've also at the press conference stated that he had already been dead. Nacole's mom was there. Obviously, she was crying, and she was just it was very emotional because she knows who did it, but she doesn't get justice for her baby girl. And then Betty Brown is also there. She's obviously now, an adult. And there's this moment where Betty Brown apologizes to Nacole's mom and says, I'm so sorry that we had to meet this way. And it's just one of those things where it's just it's kind of like a punch to the gut, These 2 women had to meet in just the most horrific way, unfortunately. But both were at least vindicated in a way. They got the answers they had been searching for such a long time. It's just that finale, right? That closure that they just don't completely get. One way to look at it, though, is that Kelvin Arnold was in a lot of pain before he finally went. He was incredibly uncomfortable, and his death was likely kind of slow. And maybe that's some way of some cosmic way of saying, well, he was punished in some way, right? Just not the way, legally speaking, that we would have all wanted. And so while Nacole and Betty did not get the legal justice they deserved, at least they can rest in peace knowing that their monster was rotting in hell. But that is it for this case. True crime, Maroony Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, please subscribe, give the video a like, and follow me over on TikTok. Recommend a case to my email. All of that is yada, yada, yada below in the description of this video. And so as I end every video, consistently, always consistently, of course, In my traditional goodbye, hop skippity hip hop hooray, suck a big fart out of a person's butthole with a twisty straw. Yep. Suck a juicy fart out of someone's butt with a twisty straw. You know those old like whimsical like Mickey Mouse or twisty straws that just you insert it and as a person is farting, you suck it out. That was, oh God, that's gross. Oh, okay. That was not the right one. Better luck next time, Mike.